Let me ask you something, my friends. Have you ever watched someone rise? The spotlight on them, the crowd cheering their name, and thought, why not me? You've put in the hours, you've failed and tried again, yet somehow they keep breaking limits while you're still searching for the key. What if I told you the gap between them and you isn't talent? It's temperature. They burn for it every day, every moment. While others wait to feel ready, they move through the fire until it shapes them. And that's where the best are born, not from comfort, but from the chaos they refuse to quit in. The first key point is to be obsessed, not merely interested. Obsession is not a reckless wildfire, it's a steady, fierce kiln that forges identity. When you're interested, you skim the surface, you attend the seminar, you read the chapter, you feel a surge, and then you move on. Obsession rewires your daily routine so that your actions begin to align with your aim without negotiation. It quietly reshapes the small choices, the hour you wake, the conversations you refuse, the habits you protect. That difference, surface curiosity versus identity, defining obsession, is the distance between applause and mastery. Obsession shows up as consistency when motivation fails. Anyone can be enthusiastic in the glow of success. Obsession keeps showing up at 5 a.m. when the world is still asleep and your excuses are loud. It is the voice that says, "One more set." When your muscles tremble, "One more draft." When the page is empty, "One more call." When prospects ignore you. This is not masochism, it is devotion to a future self. You become someone your past self couldn't imagine by doing the same small, uncomfortable things over and over until they become effortless. Obsessed people cultivate standards that outlast trends. Interest chases novelty, the newest course, the newest hack, while obsession studies fundamentals until they are invisible. Think of obsession as deep soil where roots grow. It tolerates storms because the roots are anchored. When everyone chases shortcuts, the obsessed study the fundamentals: craftsmanship, integrity, practice. They don't swap principles for convenience. The result is an unshakable competence that looks like magic to those who only skim the surface, because what looks instant is actually years of invisible, obsessive refinement. Obsession reframes failure as feedback, not fate. Someone merely interested sees a setback and assumes they lacked talent or luck. The obsessed treats that setback like a diagnostic. They interrogate their process, not their worth. This attitude transforms losing into learning cycles: test, fail, adjust, repeat. Over time, those tiny calibrations build a trajectory so steep it appears miraculous. The obsessed understand that overnight success is a myth. The truth hides in the seasons of grinding, the quiet edits, the lonely repetitions that finally compound into breakthrough. Obsession demands disciplined boundaries. It asks you to guard your attention like a treasure, because attention is the currency of becoming. That means severing low-value commitments, saying no to flattering distractions, and tolerating social friction for the sake of a larger life. This boundary setting isn't callous, it's stewardship. By protecting a focused environment, you accelerate learning and prevent diffusion of effort. Obsession doesn't require isolation. It requires intentionality, choosing environments, mentors, and habits that deepen your craft rather than dilute your days. Finally, obsession yields a different kind of joy, the quiet pride of daily devotion. It's not the hollow ecstasy of instant validation, it's the steady warmth that comes from waking up congruent with your values and progress. You'll find your identity anchored to what you build, not to applause. When you're obsessed, the work itself becomes an expression of who you are: relentless, curious, and humble enough to learn forever. That inner alignment is the engine that makes being the best possible, because excellence born of obsession is sustainable, contagious, and ultimately liberating. The second key point is to master the boring. Every great dream begins as something exciting. The spark, the rush, the big vision that makes your heart race. But that feeling doesn't last. The difference between those who rise and those who fade lies in what they do after the excitement disappears. Mastering the boring means falling in love with the ordinary, with the slow, repetitive grind that most people abandon when it stops being glamorous. It's showing up when there's no music, no spotlight, no applause, only you, your craft, and the quiet hum of routine. The people who master this stage don't just do the work, they become the work. They realize greatness is not hidden in grand gestures, but buried inside small, unremarkable acts repeated with intention. When you look at any top performer, an athlete, an artist, a surgeon, a leader, what you're really seeing is the result of thousands of dull hours spent in focused practice. They rehearse the same movements, review the same notes, analyze the same mistakes until excellence becomes reflex. Most people get bored and quit. The greats get bored and keep going. That's the secret. They learn to respect boredom. Because boredom isn't a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're getting closer to mastery. The human brain loves novelty, but mastery demands familiarity. It asks you to push through the mental resistance of repetition and find meaning in refinement. You can't outsmart this process, you can only surrender to it. Mastering the boring also builds humility. When you do the same simple task over and over, you start to realize how much you still don't know. Every repetition becomes an opportunity to notice subtle details. The way a movement feels, the way a sentence sounds, the way a decision unfolds. You stop seeking instant recognition and start chasing invisible improvement. That shift is powerful because it transfers your motivation from external validation to internal excellence. You start doing things not to be seen but to be skilled. And once your pride attaches to the process instead of the prize, you become unstoppable. You no longer need applause to fuel you. The quiet satisfaction of precision becomes enough. Most people never master the boring because they misinterpret discomfort as a signal to stop. But discomfort in repetition is not a warning, it's a teacher. The mind resists stillness because it craves variety, but the soul craves depth. Mastery happens when you dig deep enough into one thing to understand it fully, and that depth only comes from enduring the monotony. Think of a sculptor chiseling stone. Each strike seems identical, but together they reveal form and beauty. The same principle applies to your dreams. Every repetitive action, every draft, every drill, every late night revision is shaping you even when you can't see it yet. Mastering the boring also builds trust, both in yourself and in life. When you keep showing up, even without visible results, you prove to yourself that you can be counted on. That quiet self-trust becomes the backbone of resilience. You stop needing quick wins because you know progress is happening beneath the surface. Like seeds buried in the soil, growth is silent before it's visible. Each dull day is a deposit in your account of discipline, and one day that account will pay you back with compound interest. When others quit because it's not exciting anymore, your consistency becomes your competitive advantage. The truth is, mastering the boring isn't about enduring misery, it's about discovering depth. It's realizing that repetition is not a punishment, it's a privilege. It's the moment when you start to see beauty in details others overlook. You begin to feel the rhythm of improvement, the calm of routine, and the quiet power that comes from patience. The boring becomes sacred because it's where transformation happens. The ordinary moments, the lonely mornings, the unseen effort, the uncelebrated practice. Those are the bricks that build extraordinary lives. When you master the boring, life stops being a chase for excitement and becomes a steady climb toward excellence. The third key point is to not chase perfection, but to chase progress. Perfection is the mirage that keeps people running in circles, close enough to see, but never close enough to touch. It whispers that you'll be ready when it's flawless, that you'll start once everything is perfect. And so, years pass. The dream stays on paper while the world moves forward. Progress, on the other hand, is honest. It asks you for today, not for someday. It doesn't demand that you be extraordinary, only that you be better than yesterday. When you shift your focus from perfection to progress, you free yourself from the prison of waiting. You stop obsessing over getting everything right and start taking small, consistent steps that actually move you forward. The illusion of perfection is dangerous because it disguises fear as high standards. Many people don't realize they're not chasing excellence. They're avoiding judgment. It's not ready yet becomes a safe excuse to never risk failure. But progress doesn't wait for comfort. It forces you to show up messy, flawed, and uncertain, because that's how real growth happens. Think of every great invention, every song, every breakthrough. None of it started perfect. It started as a rough draft that evolved through countless imperfections. Those who progress faster aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They're simply more willing to be imperfect in public. Chasing progress means understanding that momentum matters more than mastery. You can't steer a parked car. You have to move first, even if it's clumsy. Each imperfect action gives you feedback, direction, and experience. Perfectionists wait to feel confident before they act. Progress chasers act their way into confidence. The courage to begin creates its own momentum, and that momentum compounds over time. When you focus on improvement instead of image, you start collecting results while others are still collecting excuses. Progress rewards motion. Perfection demands paralysis. The pursuit of progress also builds resilience because it teaches you to celebrate iteration, not illusion. Every small win becomes evidence that you're growing. Every mistake becomes material for refinement. The path stops being all or nothing and becomes an endless workshop. In this mindset, failure loses its sting because it's just part of the design process. You begin to understand that the masterpiece is not created by avoiding errors, but by sculpting through them. Progress-oriented people don't crumble. When something goes wrong, they adjust and adapt. Their identity is tied not to success, but to evolution. Progress also nurtures patience, the kind that perfection can never provide. Perfectionists crave instant validation. They want the finished picture now. But those who value progress learn to enjoy the process. They understand that mastery is a journey without shortcuts. They trust that small steps taken with consistency will create extraordinary results over time. This patience becomes a superpower in a world addicted to immediacy. It allows them to sustain effort when others burn out, because when your focus is progress, every day counts, even the slow ones. You stop waiting for the big moment and start collecting small, deliberate victories that stack up quietly until they roar. When you chase progress instead of perfection, you start to live with more peace and more purpose. The weight of needing to be flawless lifts, and in its place grows curiosity. You start experimenting, exploring, trying again without shame. You become more compassionate with yourself because you finally understand that growth is messy by design. True excellence is born in iteration, in the courage to refine rather than the obsession to impress. The goal is not to be perfect at the start, but to be proud at the end of each day that you moved a little closer to the person you're becoming. The fourth key point is to protect your circle. Your environment is more powerful than your intentions. You can have the sharpest vision, the biggest goals, and the purest drive, but if you're surrounded by people who drain your energy, doubt your dreams, or feed your fears, you will eventually start shrinking to fit their comfort. Protecting your circle doesn't mean cutting everyone off, it means becoming conscious of what and who is influencing your mindset. Every conversation is a seed, and every person you spend time with waters something inside you. The question is, are they watering your courage or your complacency? The people you keep close shape your standards without you even realizing it. That's why the first step to greatness isn't always addition. Sometimes it's subtraction. When you begin to elevate your life, your circle will naturally begin to shift. Some people will cheer for you genuinely, while others will feel quietly threatened. It's not because they're bad, it's because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Protecting your circle means recognizing this early and refusing to apologize for evolving. It means understanding that not everyone deserves front row access to your process. Some relationships are seasonal, meant to teach lessons, not to last forever. The mistake most people make is trying to drag everyone up the mountain with them, not realizing some were only meant to walk with them on the ground. Protecting your circle is about peace, not pride. You're not better than anyone. You're just becoming more intentional about what feeds your energy. The quality of your circle determines the quality of your thoughts. When you spend time around people who dream bigger, think deeper, and demand better from themselves, you naturally start to rise. Excellence is contagious, but so is mediocrity. Energy is like gravity, you're either being pulled upward or dragged downward. If you spend every day surrounded by pessimism, gossip, and laziness, you'll eventually normalize it. But when you sit with builders, thinkers, and doers, you begin to normalize ambition, humility, and action. Protecting your circle means deliberately curating your environment so it matches the life you want, not the life you've outgrown. Protecting your circle also means protecting your emotional bandwidth. You cannot pour into your purpose while constantly defending it. Not everyone deserves an explanation for why you're busy, why you've changed, or why you're distant. Sometimes silence is your strongest boundary. You owe your best energy to your mission, not to maintaining appearances. Protecting your circle means learning to say no without guilt, to walk away from people who thrive on drama, and to choose solitude over chaos. The higher you climb, the thinner the air gets. Not everyone is built to breathe at your altitude. That's not arrogance, it's awareness. It's also important to remember that protecting your circle isn't only about removing the wrong people. It's about nurturing the right ones, the rare few who push you forward, challenge your excuses, and celebrate your growth are worth protecting fiercely. These are your accountability partners, your quiet anchors in a noisy world. They remind you who you are when you forget, and they hold you to the standard you set when motivation fades. True friends don't compete with your light. They help you shine brighter. And when you have even 2 or 3 people like that, you are already wealthier than most. Finally, Protecting your circle also means protecting the energy you bring into it. It's not enough to demand good energy from others if you're not contributing it yourself. Be the kind of person who adds value wherever you go. The encourager, the listener, the one who leaves people feeling seen and capable. The best circles are built on mutual growth, not one-sided taking. When you protect your circle, you're not just guarding your peace, you're cultivating an ecosystem where everyone rises. It's about creating a space where dreams are safe, where honesty is normal, and where excellence is expected, not envied. The fifth key point is to fall in love with failure. Most people run from failure as if it's a disease, when in truth, it's the greatest teacher life ever designed. Failure isn't your enemy, it's your feedback. Every time you fail, the universe is holding up a mirror asking, will you learn or will you leave? Falling in love with failure means seeing it not as the end, but as the evidence that you're in the arena. It's proof that you had the courage to try. The people who never fail are not smarter, they're just spectators. The ones who win big are the ones who dare to fall, analyze the bruise, and rise again sharper than before. Failure doesn't destroy you, denial does. When you stop fearing it, failure becomes a sculptor. It chips away your weaknesses until only strength remains. Falling in love with failure also means letting go of shame. Society glorifies success stories but skips over the chapters where people were lost, broke, rejected, and doubted. Yet those are the pages where real character is written. Failure humbles you in ways success never will. It strips away ego, exposes blind spots, and forces you to rebuild from truth, not pride. Every setback brings you face to face with your limits, and that confrontation is sacred. It's in those moments, when you're frustrated, confused, and questioning your worth, that you actually evolve, because failure doesn't just test your skills, it tests your self-belief. If you can still see value in yourself after falling, you've already succeeded in the most important arena, the inner one. Failure also refines your hunger. When things come too easily, you take them for granted. But when you've fallen, tasted disappointment, and still decide to keep going, your desire becomes unbreakable. The pain of failure carves depth into your determination. It teaches you that success earned through resilience tastes different. It's richer, more grounded, more real. Every great achiever you admire has a long trail of invisible losses behind their public victories. They didn't avoid failure, they absorbed it. They learned to use it as fuel, turning embarrassment into energy. Falling in love with failure means you stop wasting energy hiding your wounds and start using them as proof that you're still fighting. The beauty of failure lies in the clarity it brings. Success can be deceptive. It often hides flaws behind applause. But failure is brutally honest. It doesn't lie. It tells you exactly what needs fixing, exactly what's missing. It strips away illusion and leaves only reality. That honesty is what allows you to refine your craft with precision. Every failure is an audit of your approach. It exposes weak habits, lazy thinking, and emotional shortcuts. If you pay attention, failure becomes your most loyal mentor. The problem isn't that people fail, it's that they refuse to study the failure. They rush to escape it instead of listening to it. But those who sit with it, dissect it, and learn from it rise with a wisdom that no success seminar can teach. Falling in love with failure also builds empathy and strength of character. When you've been through disappointment yourself, you become gentler with others who are struggling. You stop judging from a distance and start understanding from experience. That's what gives great leaders their depth. They've failed enough to stop pretending they're perfect. They've bled enough to respect other people's battles. And ironically, that humility is what attracts even greater success. Because the universe doesn't trust perfection, it trusts authenticity. People follow those who've fallen and still rise with grace, not those who pretend they've never stumbled. And maybe the most powerful part of falling in love with failure is that it sets you free. When you no longer fear failing, you stop playing small. You stop waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, or the perfect confidence. You just move. You create. You take risks that others avoid because they're still protecting their image. Failure frees you from the tyranny of perfection and gives you permission to live boldly. Once you realize that failing doesn't kill you, it builds you. You stop surviving and start evolving. The moment you embrace failure as part of your process, not a threat to your pride, you unlock a level of power, creativity, and courage that the comfort zone could never offer. The sixth key point is to build inner strength before outer success. The world teaches us to chase the visible, the money, the titles, the recognition. But what truly sustains greatness is invisible. Inner strength is that quiet, unshakable foundation beneath every lasting achievement. It's what holds you steady when results don't show up, when critics speak louder than supporters, when life tests your patience and confidence at the same time. Without inner strength, outer success becomes fragile. It looks shiny but cracks under pressure. Building inner strength means working on your mindset with the same discipline you apply to your craft. It means building emotional endurance, mental clarity, and spiritual resilience so that your success has roots, not just branches. Inner strength starts with emotional control. It's the ability to stay calm when the world around you isn't. It's not suppression, it's mastery. People with true strength don't let their emotions dictate their actions, they let their purpose do that. They've learned that reacting in anger, panic, or ego only drains their power, so they pause, they breathe, they respond from awareness, not impulse. This composure doesn't make them cold, it makes them clear, and that clarity is what allows them to make strong decisions while others are drowning in chaos. Inner strength isn't about never feeling weak. It's about knowing how to return to center, no matter how many storms try to pull you away. Building inner strength also means developing the courage to be alone with yourself. Most people fear silence because it forces them to face their thoughts. But silence is where truth lives. It's where you learn what you really believe, what you truly value, and who you actually are when the noise fades. When you can sit in solitude without needing constant distraction or validation, you gain power that can't be taken from you. You stop chasing approval because you already have peace. You stop trying to prove your worth because you've already met it. Inner strength is born in those quiet hours when you confront your doubts and choose faith anyway. Another layer of inner strength is self-discipline, the daily act of keeping promises to yourself. Every time you say you'll do something and actually follow through, you reinforce trust within. That self-trust is the backbone of confidence. You stop waiting for motivation because you've built integrity into your habits. Discipline is the muscle of the mind, and it grows through repetition, not inspiration. Inner strength doesn't scream, it whispers. Do it anyway. It's what gets you to the gym when no one's watching, what keeps you studying when no one's grading, what makes you show up consistently even when progress is invisible. That's where greatness is born, in private moments of follow through that no one claps for. Inner strength also requires perspective, the ability to interpret challenges through a growth lens rather than a victim one. Life will test you, that's guaranteed, but the strong don't ask, why me? They ask, what is this teaching me? That shift turns pain into power. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to sharpen your patience, your empathy, your wisdom. People who lack inner strength see every setback as an attack. People who have it see every setback as an assignment. They understand that adversity doesn't break them. It builds capacity. It stretches their tolerance, expands their emotional range, and deepens their character. Lastly, inner strength is about alignment, living in a way that matches your values even when it's inconvenient. It's easy to talk about integrity when life is smooth, but it's tested when compromise looks tempting. Real strength is saying no to shortcuts that betray your principles, even when no one would find out. It's being kind when others are cruel, disciplined when others are distracted, grounded when others are drifting. That alignment creates peace that no amount of external success can replace. Because at the end of the day, your outer world can only rise to the level of your inner world. Build that first, and everything else follows. Not because it's easy, but because you've built yourself to handle hard. The seventh key point is to leave something behind. Life is not about how much you collect, it's about how much you contribute. Most people spend their days chasing success, but the truly fulfilled chase significance. Success ends with you, significance begins when what you've built continues to inspire others long after you're gone. Leaving something behind doesn't always mean creating a company or writing a book. It means living in a way that leaves a mark on hearts, not just headlines. It's about the conversations that outlast the moment, the kindness that echoes beyond the act, the courage that becomes someone else's permission to try. When you live with legacy in mind, every decision starts to matter more. You stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I give that will outlive me? Leaving something behind starts with purpose. You can't build legacy accidentally, it requires direction. Too many people chase goals without understanding why they matter. But purpose gives your work weight. It turns routine into responsibility. When your actions are anchored in purpose, you begin to live intentionally. You stop drifting through days and start designing them. The most powerful legacies are not built overnight. They are built through decades of aligned choices. Every moment of integrity, every act of service, every stand for what's right becomes a brick in the structure of your impact. Purpose doesn't just give your life meaning, it gives your legacy momentum. The heart of legacy is influence, not in the social media sense, but in the human sense. Influence is what happens when your example becomes someone else's education, when your consistency teaches someone what discipline looks like, when your kindness shows someone what love feels like. Influence is silent leadership. It's the trail you leave behind simply by living authentically. You might never know who's watching you, who's finding courage because you refuse to quit, or who's healing because of your empathy. Leaving something behind doesn't always mean changing the world at scale. Sometimes it means changing one person's world completely. To leave something behind, you must also learn to detach your worth from recognition. True legacy is not about credit, it's about contribution. Some of the most impactful people in history were never acknowledged during their lifetime. They kept giving, creating, and serving because their motivation was internal. They understood that greatness isn't validated by applause, it's validated by affect. When you stop needing validation, your work becomes purer. You start focusing on depth rather than visibility. You plant trees whose shade you may never sit under, and that's what makes it noble. You give without expecting return, and life finds ways to multiply it beyond your reach. Another dimension of leaving something behind is mentorship. The decision to pour your wisdom into others so they don't have to make the same mistakes you did. Knowledge that dies with you is wasted potential. But when you share it, you turn experience into empowerment. Mentorship doesn't always require a stage or a title, it starts with intention. It's taking time to guide someone, to listen, to remind them they're capable. Legacy is not only what you achieve, but also what you transfer. When you invest in others, your growth multiplies. Your lessons echo through people you may never meet, and your fingerprints start showing up in places your feet never walked. Leaving something behind is, ultimately, about living with awareness that your life is part of a larger story. Every action, every word, every moment is a sentence in that story. When you start to see life through that lens, you begin to act differently. You become more patient, more generous, more intentional. You start to think beyond the moment, beyond the reward, beyond yourself. Because deep down, everyone wants to be remembered. But the wise understand that remembrance is not earned through noise, it's earned through meaning. To leave something behind is to live in such a way that your presence continues to guide even in your absence. A life so authentic, so grounded in purpose, that its impact ripples quietly through generations. And that is the journey, the 7 rules to be the best at anything, not rules written in books, but truths carved through experience, through failure, through quiet moments when no one is watching. Each one builds on the other. Obsession fuels consistency, discipline shapes mastery, courage transforms failure into wisdom, and purpose turns achievement into legacy. Being the best isn't about standing above others. It's about standing taller than your former self. It's about waking up every day and choosing to refine your thoughts, your habits, and your heart. It's about becoming the kind of person whose actions speak louder than ambition, whose presence lifts others, and whose resilience becomes a roadmap for those who follow. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need perfect conditions, approval, or luck. You already have everything within you. The will, the mind, the fire. What you need is the decision to start, to stay, and to never settle. Because every extraordinary story begins with one ordinary person who refused to quit. So let the world chase trends, shortcuts, and applause. You chase growth, chase depth. Chase that quiet excellence that doesn't need to shout to be seen. Build yourself so strong on the inside that no storm can break you, and so purposeful on the outside that your life becomes a light for others. One day, someone will look at you, your work, your strength, your calm in chaos, and say, "That's what greatness looks like." And you'll smile, not because you've arrived, but because you'll know you became.